So I put the first topic in here really because I'm kind of figuring out now that I have good, close, or reasonable proximity to a large park with bodies of water, I may or may not be interested in pursuing water-based activities again as we're entering the summer. And part of that's driven out of realizing that I do enjoy rowing. So I figured that will be a potentially longer topic between the two, but that's what I wanted to basically create something that says, tell me how you navigated figuring out going to the kayaking route over other things, or if it was a natural progression or what, that just high level into whatever details you want. And then the other topic was just a very quick piece of follow-up, because I know in a previous show, maybe been an after show, there was the recommendation to look at Absco for outdoor furniture. And so the follow-up was literally just that I'm expecting, as we record, a delivery of new outdoor furniture for our patio area tomorrow morning.
Yay. That's awesome. Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to being able to actually sit down in comfortable outdoor furniture again for a change. Like it's been so long since I've had that.
Yeah, comfortable outdoor furniture does not get old. Or the feeling of sitting in good furniture doesn't get old.
But I didn't necessarily want to spend much time there because I'm far more interested in the water activities topic.
Yeah. So the first time I'd ever been out on the water, in a way, was I think I was 6 years old or so, and my parents went to a pretty big church in Mobile, Alabama, and their Sunday school class had a like a family day, and you go canoeing. And I don't know what river we were on. I really don't know much of the details, but I do have some memories of it. I remember towards the end of the day, we were in an area with very swift-moving water, and also sometime at that day, I saw the eastern leatherback grasshopper, and in my head, I was like, as I got older, I was like wondering if it was real, because it did not look like a standard grasshopper. The body of that thing was probably 5 inches long, like huge. And I questioned if it was real. And I remember as an adult speaking to somebody else who lived in South Alabama, like, oh, no, that's a thing. And like they get that big. And I was like, okay, I didn't make that up. So that was my first time. So I didn't do much of the work at all. I just remember like the biggest task for me that day was making sure that I got the red life jacket that looked really cool. I mean, it had like a little crest on it. I thought it was cool. So I have no idea what the crest was, but it was probably like the brand. But
probably.
Anyway, so that was my first time, and then I didn't paddle at all, anything, until sometime in high school. I took a trip down the again, not sure what river it was, because I don't think it would have been the Cahaba. It was a summertime trip. There was one guy who this was I think a homeschool group. Someone from the homeschool group organized this trip, and this guy was an avid canoeer. And I remember going down whatever river we went down. I think it was North Alabama. In a canoe, had a good time. Canoes, like if you don't have anyone teaching you, or you're a teenager and completely missed that somebody was trying to give you a few helpful hints at the beginning of the trip, which I'm assuming happened because this guy was like really into it. I just don't have no recollection of knowing of really getting any direction on how to paddle. So I'm assuming that because I was a teenager, I just completely missed it. But that was a nice little trip. But I don't think I really did anything in the water until 2015. A friend of mine.
I didn't realize it was that recent.
Yeah.
So before you get into the 2015 era and later, then let me interject real quick, because it sounds like a lot of early experiences are similar. we spent a lot of time on the Flint River in either canoes or inner tubes, just depending on what the choice was. But it was with mostly Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
And so my experience has almost completely been focused on canoes, with the exception of one ocean kayak in a protected bay area that, the water was not rough. There was no need to be concerned about technique or anything else. And it was okay. But up to that point with that one particular kayak, everything has literally been either inner tubes, like you would expect, just floating down the river, or we did a lot of canoe trips. And so one of the things that came to mind was with a significant other who is very opposed to going underwater because of it inducing a level of panic, and a son who still cannot swim at this point, or he's had swim lessons. I think he could probably do it if he actually tried, but I've got to focus on rectifying that again. But with that type of makeup, I was thinking a canoe might actually be a better option if they were even going to join me, and I'm not so sure they are. But that's what initially started this thought process in my head, and then it was being, I'm not going to say close to Oak Mountain specifically, but it's extremely convenient.
Yeah.
Where I could go out there pretty regularly. And so those were the things that prompted the conversation. But I say all that just to say that it sounds like I probably have a better grasp on the canoe basics and navigation than you did up to that point, just because it was within the scope and confines of actually attempting to learn how to navigate and everything else with scouts at first. And then it became more about, what we could get away with and how we could go down a waterfall sideways or backwards and whatever else and not, end up in the water.
Yeah, I think I would love to try an outrigger canoe. I have not done it. I have not ever paddled anything like that. So just a standard canoe, I think in the British version of English, canoe can also refer to a kayak. So, it's the terms are. We'll say careful. We'll just describe a canoe as a light, narrow vessel that is open. It's pointed on both ends and open, and use a single bladed paddle for locomotion.
And typically has 2 seats.
Yeah. Well,
2 or more.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
I'm sure there are single seat versions as well, but
yeah, I was just gonna say, it's not uncommon to find these at a length that can accommodate 2 paddlers, which is really important because I think the role of bowman is an incredibly important position, or bowwoman. So. There's a guy I follow on YouTube, and he was going on, I wouldn't say his first paddling trip, but he wasn't regularly a paddler, and he kept going on and on about being the bowman, and so I even though nobody ever gets the reference, I very much emphasize the importance of the bowman. It's also fun to say I realized why he was having a good time talking about being a bowman. I guess it is a nautical term, but it took me. I didn't want to sound. So I knew starboard was the right side as you are paddling downriver, and the port side is the left side. Those terms aren't. I don't think those terms are used terribly much in such a small vessel. And one of the things I find interesting, or if you are in a if you're in a boat with a motor and you're out and you see a kayak, you basically treat them as a solid, not a object, but as a stationary object, because you're moving so much faster. So I've been, I don't think I've ever driven a motorized boat when there were kayakers in the water, but I've definitely been a kayaker in the water with motorized boats. And yeah, for all intents and purposes, you're stationary to them. So
I would expect that to potentially create some difficult water as well, depending on how polite, I guess, the person in the other vessel is.
So it's funny you say that, because there have been more times where I wish they wouldn't slow down, because I want to play in their wake, than have slowed down. So most of the time most of the people I've been around have been courteous and demonstrated good etiquette on the water and slow down while passing. But every once in a while I've been out in a channel and they didn't necessarily need to slow. Like, it wasn't bad etiquette for them to not slow down, and I found it a lot of fun to play in their wake. So
I could see that, because I know it's not as common with inner tubes as far as encountering vessels in the rivers, because typically if you're going to, or at least in my experience has been, if you're going to be in a tube floating down the river, it tends to be a river where you're not going, or a section of a river where you're not going to have motorized boats either.
Probably because it's too shallow.
Right. And so I could see where that would be fun to play with if it were an option, because if you go to a lake and you're being pulled behind a motorized boat in a tube, that's when it's fun to play in the wake as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say, just a quick side note, once you understand posture and base and balance, it's tough as hell for someone to throw you from a tube.
Yeah.
You have to literally be inviting it and trying to make it happen for them to be successful.
I can remember one time trying to ride on an inner tube, and my friend was like, okay, lean. I think I was like 10 or 11 years old. He's like, okay, lean forward. He's like, when I tell you, he's like, lean forward with me. Put as much of your weight forward as you possibly can. I didn't know what was about to happen. And the boat that was pulling us slowed down just a little bit. And he's like, now. And so we both leaned forward and submerged the front of the inner tube, which takes the whole thing down. And so the boat's having a really tough time trying to pull an inner tube underneath water. And I just remember it's like, I need to let go, because I felt my shorts leaving my body. And around the time that they hit my knees, I was like, I let go, because I didn't want to lose my shorts. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because that would have been, I just remember thinking, like, semi-traumatized, that I might have to just be sitting here with a towel wrapped around me for the rest of the day, because I lost my shorts. But thankfully I did not. So, so 2015 rolled around, and that's when I started doing more outdoor things for various reasons. I think the last time I had camped, going into 2015, the last time I had camped was in 2005. So it took like a 10-year hiatus, and the last time I'd been on, paddled any, I'd been out to, like, people's swimming holes and swim there. Like, I do that all the time. I was a big fan of that. But the first time I had been invited to go on a paddling trip was 8 years ago. It was in May, and a friend of mine who's an avid paddler invited me and to go paddling with him and his various friends that he invites, and we went up to, I don't remember where this is. It's Piedmont, Alabama, and there's now 3 outfitters on Terrapin Creek, and we rented a sit on top kayak, and I liked it a lot. Like that day ended, and the rest of my whole everything that revolved around that summer was like me scheming on how to collect enough extra money to buy a kayak. And so I really like to sit on top, and one of the reasons was it's great for summertime activity because it's you're on top, you're exposed to the sunshine, you're not in a cockpit getting hot. It's not it's not so if you're in the right vessel, it's not so buoyant that you feel unstable. And they're practically unsinkable, provided you don't puncture the hull. The thing, and you have all the hatches closed. It's practically unsinkable. So those were kind of good. And that sort of like thinking and this praise that my friend had for sit on top kayaks led me to be like, okay, this is the right solution. And I've since gotten into a traditional kayak, like a sea kayak or a traditional kayak. They're a lot faster than the sit on tops, but they are significantly warmer, and it's less than ideal for summer. And they're also just not a great place to start for paddling. And the reason they're not really good to start with is because you have to manage not getting water inside your vessel. You fall off of, water splashes on your sit on top kayak. It's a self-bailing vessel. There's on the majority of them that I've seen. I don't want to speak for every single one, but the majority of sit on top kayaks have scupper holes, and you get water on the top of your boat. They find their ways to those holes and rinse out. So that's part of the unsinkable design. I found them, you can swamp a canoe, you can swamp a traditional kayak. That makes the sit on top easier to manage as a new paddler. You can start focusing on, or you can keep your focus on paddling techniques. And again, in the summertime, it makes for a good watercraft. So that was where I started. And so I think in 2015, actually ended up, every time I paddled somewhere, I tried to rent a different make and model kayak so that I could try as many before buying one. And I used any friend who had one, and ask them for a chance to just paddle theirs just for a few minutes, just to see what they were like. And I paddled a few and kind of found the one that I really liked. The first kayak I had was Ocean Kayak. The brand was Ocean Kayak. I'm trying to remember the name of the model. It was I think the Predator Big Game. Is it Predator or Prowler? I can't. I obsessed over this kayak for such a long time. It's kind of odd that I don't remember the name. So it was the reason. One of the reasons why is Ocean Kayak is owned by a company called Johnson Outdoors, and they make. So they own Ocean Kayak. They also have Old Town. I think Old Town is one of their brands, but they have several brands, and they make under one brand. They make a similar kayak under one brand. Like there's a kind of like how Kenmore and blanking Whirlpool. I think they come out of the same. They just have they're the same device, and they just come out on with different badges.
Well, and it gets kind of confusing with the appliances now, because at some point Whirlpool and Maytag also either merged or maybe they've always been part of the same parent company. I don't know, but
yeah, it's even worse than like in the 90s. That was like Whirlpool. I don't remember. I know Kenmore was the Sears brand. You could only get Kenmore at Sears, but it was it was some other brand that was available elsewhere that they just put Kenmore stickers on. So it was a good quality product. It was just
it was just an exclusive for that particular retail outlet. Yeah.
So Prowler was the Old Town model. I think it must be Predator. No, Predator was the Old Town model. It must be Prowler. It had two different names. It was the Ocean Kayak Prowler Big Game 2. So I guess it was a Mark II.
It's a lot to...
Yeah.
Right.
So
marketing teams really have so much trouble naming things especially when you get into like outdoor gear, to try to attract an audience to take a look.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many different names do I need to mash together to make it seem appealing?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, with in the last 20 years, I read somewhere in the last 20 years that corporations have acquired 50% of themselves. So it's like when 20 years ago we had twice as many. Am I doing the math right? Or there are half as many corporations that were independent that are now owned by an existing one. And you know what happened? When that happens, it means that a lot of times you end up with less, and you can tell, you end up with less diversity in the marketplace, and it becomes problematic because they don't want to. Companies don't want to cannibalize existing or good products, so you pick the better of the two, and then do whatever marketing name you're going to do on it, and now you end up with fewer products on the market. So,
and not to take us on a tangent, but the same general issue is part of where Jobs' genius stemmed from when it came to going to market with specific product quadrants when he came back from Next, and
they had
just saying no to everything else. Let's take these 4 core products and let's make them the best we can, and then if we need to diversify within that product lineup, we do. And of course, it's ebbed and flowed since then, but it's a classic case in. Once you recognize that there's a problem where you're creating more of a barrier for your users than you are creating answers to problems or solutions in general, you've got to be able to just start from a core fundamental business. So like, talking about kayaks, you would have, your canoe, kayak, or canoe, open air kayak, and capsule kayak. Maybe a fourth option somewhere in there. Inflatables. I don't know.
Stand up paddleboard.
Yeah, but you reach a point where you just say, okay, we've got so much that's just making it difficult to navigate the market and making it difficult on us and increasing our cost for production to have all these different models. These are the 4 or 5 specific items we're now going to standardize on, and maybe it's this brand for the canoe and this brand for kayak number 1, etc., based on brand recognition and loyalty and that kind of thing, and start from that point and move forward. But most companies don't think about it that way, unfortunately.
Yeah. I will say though that it did seem it does seem. I suppose there's some benefit in some, making essentially the same vessel under 2 different names. I want to say like one of them had, like, you could say if you looked at the feature set and I don't think one might say that like one had a higher trim level than the other, but none of them, like, they don't feel like it doesn't feel like in the world of kayaks that really there's like here's this high end brand, here's this low end brand. I take that back. There definitely is. Sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna say, having looked at the just remember as I said that, I was remembering the boats that you find in just your typical big box sporting goods store.
I was just going to add on that, it's the same model that the automotive industry has used forever. You referenced the trim levels, but
Yeah.
You make it this particular model in three different styles with, three different qualities of material, and that's the differentiator, or you add another feature, or streamline some rough edges on this model, that kind of thing. And the automotive industry has historically leveraged that to some level of success. I think it's antiquated at this point, but time will tell.
Yeah. Well, I just thought about, like, there's really kind of two. I feel like there might be two classes of kayaks, and one, you have like something that you would find at a large retailer like Walmart or Dick's Sporting Goods or Academy Sports. Those places, looking at the boats that they have there, they are like the quality. It's not so much that the quality of materials is less, it's that the design is not as good. Like, I find that to be more of a problem than anything else, because a lot of the time the hull design is it's a shallow, rather flat hull, and so it's not ideal for paddling and tracking. It's slower, it's requires more effort from the paddler, but it does increase stability, more or less. But really, the big thing is like, I don't think you're going to find a boat over 12 feet long in any of those stores, because even though the longer boats are better for tracking and speed, they are a lot more unwieldy. So you end up with like short, fat, heavy boats from these places, and so in terms of, are those good boats? In terms of, does it get you out on the water and you didn't have to spend too much money? Yes, it's a great boat for that. It's those boats existing allow people who want to have some access to the water but aren't willing to spend more money. They want to get in as inexpensively as possible. That's a great boat. They're probably not paddling every weekend, and I don't want to say they're less serious about it, but or less committed, because that seems like a judgment call. They're just not willing to put more money into it, and that gets them out on the water, and that's a good thing. And then there's
a good way to think of that is what you're after drives whether or not that's a good fit. For someone who wants to make it enjoyable on fairly consistent long distance runs, they would probably want to invest in something that reduces friction or the amount of exertion in general. That would just be a high priority. And similar to if you're a runner and you run endurance, you're going to want something that really cushions the impact over the long haul, not something that maybe helps with some springiness for a sprint.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. I feel like there's nothing really in between this, and to go to the next level, you're going to more than likely triple what you're spending, but you end up with like a much better hull design, a much more comfortable seat, and better features for storing and doing whatever it is that you're doing on your vessel. So, but I was going to say, all through 2002 and most of 2016, I was trying different boats, and also, I was also paddling canoes, paddled canoes several times to make sure that I didn't, that wasn't where I was going, and also stand-up paddle boards. it didn't take me long to figure out that is not what I wanted. So, I decided to go with a sit-on-top kayak, and I have been somewhat interested in a traditional kayak for a certain kind of paddling, but most of what I do is I enjoy being on the sit-on-top.
And then for most of what you do, is that a mixture of flowing and calm waters, or is that...
Yes. Yeah. I tend to... So I started out with a 12-foot boat and ended up going up to a 16-foot boat. And I really the 16-foot boat that I have now is the one that I have enjoyed the most. It doesn't seem to be too unruly in creeks. So most of what I do is river and creek paddling. So I'll give you some of the dimensions. The first vessel I had, it was the first kayak I had was the Ocean Kayak Prowler Big Game 2. That's what I ended up with. And a lot of the reason I went towards that is because it had a really a significant payload. I think they were rated for 500 to 600 pounds. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. I had a friend that had one. I paddled it at least once for a day, and I really enjoyed the stability of it. And so that's why I started with it. It also had an incredibly comfortable seat, and that seat had two positions. It had a where you would expect the seat to be, and then it could be adjusted and raised up maybe 2 inches, which is fairly uncommon for kayaks. The reason this one could do it is because this was even though I am not a fisherman, nor do I fish. This was a fishing, it was designed for fishermen. So you had a seat that lifted up and gave you a better view for fishing. And then you could lower it for paddling.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I loved it.
I never would have thought about fishing off of a kayak.
Oh, it's a thing. There's a whole industry of fishing kayaks. I always put my seat in the high position for fun, especially as I got more used to paddling. Like after the first year, I always kept in the high position because it was different. It was fun. It was people was like, you need to I had my friend who also had the same boat. He knew about the position. He's like, you got to lower it for this next run. You're going to fall in. And I was like, if I can't make it up high, then I can't make it at all. But that had a very comfortable seat. A feature that I wish that boat had was that another company, Jackson, they make I think at least two, maybe one, I know at least one, but maybe two of their fishing kayaks are such that you can remove the seat completely and use it as your camp chair.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah, I thought that would be a nice little feature. Anyway, that boat it weighed 75 pounds. It was 36 inches wide and 12 feet 9 inches long. It's a big fat boat. And for how big it was, it actually, and how short it was, it tracked relatively well, and it was not a fast boat. I'll say that. For its width and size, it was pretty good, but you were never going to win any sort of race in that. But I think I had that for 4 years. I paddled that boat for 4 years, and then I just started getting to where I was like, ooh, I want a faster, slimmer boat. And I ended up with a wilderness. I ended up actually at 1.3 Wilderness Systems Tarpon 160. The 160 denoting the length being 16 feet long. It was 28 inches wide. It weighed about the same, but it was a lot more narrow and a lot longer, so it went faster. It's like I'd going from the first one I had to the second one. I'd take a stroke and I'm like, whoa, that was too much.
And so I know you've touched on the big box retailers. Is there a specialized retailer where you could actually go look at any of these, or are you just looking at them online?
So Yeah, so the largest seller of kayaks in the state is the outfitter at Terrapin. I think he's called Terrapin. He's on Terrapin Creek. I can't remember what the name. Wow, I'm feeling bad because Terrapin Outdoor Center. That's what it is. I'm blanking on who it was, but Terrapin Outdoor Center. They have good. That guy is the largest seller of kayaks. I bought 3 boats from him over the years. I was trying to think if there's been more. But so I bought my first one from him, brand new. And when I was interested in the Wilderness Systems tarpon, I actually bought that on Facebook. It was either Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. I cannot remember which. I actually bought 2 that way, and they're it's like pretty easy to make sure that it's something that you like. But I bought 2 that way, and I ended up buying the third one from Mike out at Terrapin Outdoor Center, because I knew that I liked the boat so much, and they were discontinued. They discontinued it in 2019 was the last year, but he had one in the color that I absolutely wanted the whole time that I'd been paddling. He had one. He was not asking for it at all. I think he was asking a little bit under MSRP for it, and I was like, yes, I want it, and I bought his last one.
So why over time? Why 3 different ones? Was it just to have them, or?
It's kind of stupid. The first one I didn't want to spend. I wanted to spend buying a used boat money on whether or not I was going to like it, because if I buy it at buying a used boat, buying a used boat price, then I could, if I turned out to hate it, I could probably sell it for used boat price. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So I bought that first one and I loved it. I went down to, actually went down to Florida to get this. There was a woman who was selling her ex-husband's kayak. He kind of left, and she asked him to get it. Well, this is what she told me. She asked him numerous times to come and pick it up, and he never did. So he's like, I'll sell it. And he still didn't respond. So I took it, she was selling it for a good price. And there's a little bit of sun damage on some of the hatches, but no, not a really big deal. I picked it up for, I want to say $400. And I think the MSRP on it at the time was $1,100. So I tried it out. I loved it. And I was like, okay, great. The only thing that I really, with a boat that long, the thing that I thought would be really helpful, and turned out to be absolutely correct about this, but a rudder. So there's really only one rudder maker for this boat, and it's the manufacturer of the boat. They're the only ones that are making a rudder for it. And so I was like, I'll pick up one of these rudders. And the rudders, so for this $1,100 boat, the rudder by itself is about $300. And I was like, okay, I'm about to put three quarters of what I paid on this boat into the boat as an accessory. I'm willing to do it. It's not a big deal. So, but I thought, let me see if I can find a used rudder on Facebook Marketplace. Found a guy selling another Wilderness Systems Tarpon 160 with a rudder for $400. And I'm like, I could buy this rudder and get a boat for $100. So I did. And so that's how I ended up with the second one. And the third one was what I just said, the brand new one. It was like, I knew I liked the boat, want to keep the boat, would love to start out brand new. And it was in the color that I wanted, so which is red. The other 2 that I have are blue, which they stopped making, I think, in 2015. So
interesting. So how's the rudder work? Is it a foot assembly or something?
Yes. So you pull out the foot pegs and put in new foot pegs that are on the older rudders, like the first one I had, the used one that I had, it was an older style rudder, and it uses, I can't remember what cord. I want to say it is a twisted braided stainless steel. And now the new, so when I bought my new kayak, I was like, well, I got to get a rudder for this one too. So I bought a brand new rudder for it. I actually found it on sale. From Austin Kayak at one point. I think it was $220 instead of the $300, something like that. And it came with a line called Spectra, which I thought was pretty cool. But it was I think it is a synthetic fiber with it looks like a metal, like a very fine mesh metal sheath. Like it might also be a synthetic sheath. I can't tell, but it seemed to be a little more durable, based on the potentially getting salt water in your. It has foot pegs. You replace part of it comes with it comes as a kit, and you replace the foot pegs, and the foot pegs are tied to this Spectra line. And when you want to when you want the rudder to turn the direction of the boat right, you push the right foot peg forward and left. And so there's a whole pulley system inside. So there's a pulley system inside these. So when I bought mine new, it was rudder ready. So basically you got the rudder attachment and you just had to run the lines through. It was pretty easy to set up.
Interesting. I didn't realize that rudders were a thing on those.
It makes a significant difference on a boat that long. And
I have no doubt. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I just didn't realize there was actually the ability to do that.
Yeah. So use your foot pedals to turn. There was one day I was paddling down the Coosa River, which has some nice rapids, and mostly small rapids. There's one, depending on the water flow, class 2 to 3. That's a lot of fun. But there was, I remember I was paddling and I was trying to help someone, like verbally help somebody. And then I realized, I'm about to go through these rapids, and I'm about to hit a rock head on. And then I was like, I started paddling, trying to turn my boat, and I was maybe after the third really hard stroke, I was like, the putt rudder, and I pushed my foot peg in, and I was like zoomed right around it. I was like, that could have been helpful like 3 strokes ago. But it was the difference between me falling in and not falling in.
Interesting. I don't know. I have quite a bit to think about in general. Obviously, I'm not planning to do anything anytime soon. I mean, we just bought a house and all sorts of other stuff. But it was one of those things where I was thinking about. I remembered at one point you mentioning if I ever wanted to join in or tag along on a trip, that he'll let you know. And
absolutely.
So I figured I would. What better way to make it, public and everything else than to do an episode surrounding it?
Yeah.
But I figured it might also be a good alternative to always just rowing on the machine inside. So
yeah, one of the things. I'm really glad I chose I went with a kayak instead of a canoe. My friend who invited me, he had been a long time canoeer. I don't know he also I don't know how many canoes he owned over the years. He would, in addition to looking for good deals in the used market, just to have a certain boat. And I'll say this: he's the one who also had the Ocean Kayak Prowler Big Game 2 that I bought. He's the one who invited me to my first paddling trip in 2015. He encouraged the habit. He allowed me to paddle numerous boats that he owned. He also, before he was paddling kayaks, before there was a big market for sit-on-top kayaks, he was in a canoe. He's a couple of decades older than me, and so he spent most of his paddling days in canoes. for various reasons. He does fishing. He's a herpetology enthusiast, so he'll catch a turtle and release it and so forth. And but I gathered from this is a man who is an avid paddler through most of his life, and he grew up in canoes and decided to make a switch to the kayak. That was not for no reason. And I think the sit on top kayak has a certain ease that may not be obvious. And I thought the paddling stroke for kayaks was a lot easier to not understand, but actually put into practice and become proficient at than it would be for paddling a canoe. I was not good at the J stroke.
Yeah, canoes in general are annoying if you're trying to do anything solo. Like
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that plenty of people have gotten really good at it over time, but they're just not typically, or at least none of the ones that I've been in, they're not typically made for solo travelers.
You speak about people who've gotten good at paddling a canoe. There's a video of a guy basically dancing with his canoe like it's a dance partner. It's amazing. I'll send it to you later tonight, but it is one of the most it's a feat that I never even would have considered being a thing. So unless you want to pause and I send it to you now, it's actually I'd say it's that good.
Yeah, either way, like I don't mind if we want to pause. Then I actually will take a moment to stand up and grab a drink and then come back and we'll go from there. All right, I'm back.
I was just thinking I never hear your cats anymore.
It's kind of nice from my perspective, but totally. It is kind of. It's funny. We decided we would intentionally not let them downstairs, not specifically because of like recording or anything else. If we go out of town, that means that we can keep them still locked in the upstairs area, and if we need to move something downstairs that they might get into or whatever else, like it's a place that doesn't have to be cat proofed. And so it was kind of that makes sense. If we can swing it and we don't have to put the litter box downstairs, then let's do that. And it worked out to be able to do it that way. So
nice. But
it sucks because like during the day, a lot of times the cats would come sit in my lap while I was working, and I don't get that anymore.
Yeah.
So I have to go upstairs and taking a break helps. So class today, one of the things that we were working on was a lot of pressure on the inside of the leg to get past someone's defenses in general, and sitting for more than about an hour makes that really stiff. And so it helps to get up and move around for a minute.
So
the joys of combat arts.
I was going to say the joys of getting older.
And that too.
I don't think it's important to watch the entire video, but just maybe the first couple of minutes. It's pretty impressive. In my head,
canoeing. Huh?
Yeah, I didn't know that's what it was. I searched canoe dancer. and then I saw freestyle, and I was like, "That's what it is." So I searched that, and I found this. This was the video I first saw.
Oh, even just the initial turning is impressive.
That's impressive, and there's like one other move that it does. It's it's really impressive. But this is. I didn't know it was a thing until I guess it's. I don't know. I was just. Like, I totally understand how he's doing what he's doing, and I understand, just as someone who's paddled, like, I understand what's going on here, but he's just really good at it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's why I tried to make sure I emphasized that I'm sure it exists and plenty of people know how to do it. It's just my experience has always been. The canoes are relatively unwieldy.
Well, I think it's a matter of like.
That's also a much smaller canoe than the ones that I've generally been in.
Yeah, it is a small canoe that he's in, But even in a large one, I think no matter what, you're going to put in more power. And so depending on what your goals are, like if you've got two people, you've got twice as much human power paddling the boat, and you can also put in a lot of stuff into a canoe. Way more. You can load up a canoe way more than you can a kayak. And I've done a number of paddling trips, like overnight paddling trips, where like I'm taking food and for multiple meals and shelter and so forth. But I have enough lightweight hiking gear that it really, I didn't need the extra payload. I started to prioritize speed and ease of paddling over ability to carry things and quote unquote stability. I learned a lot of stability paddling, but having lightweight gear. Whenever I took overnight paddling trips, it was like, oh, I get to pack all the fun stuff, all the fun heavy stuff, because I don't have to carry it. It just it's in the boat. So I never needed a lot of weight, and I still don't need I don't need the need to carry a lot of weight. So that also made changing boats pretty easy.
Yeah, and it's also why most of my experience has been with canoes, because it was on camping trips in general with scouts. So there you're loading up a lot of stuff because it's a lot of kids.
Yeah, I also remembered one of the overnight paddling trips I took was I had a canoe, and it ended up being somewhat problematic because I didn't have enough weight in just my things alone. So I was a single person paddling a canoe, and I ended up taking on maybe two other people's equipment so I could weigh down the front of my canoe, because if it rides high, me sitting in the back, having no bowman, it rides higher and it's not as an efficient of a vessel. And so, if one of the things, if you don't have enough weight, that can be problematic. And when I ended up buying a boat for myself, it was I was single, and it was right at the beginning of me being single, and that lasted for 3.5 years, and so it made sense not to get a boat that was made for two.
And side story, one of the most fun times we had in a canoe, we had your typical rental canoe, right? Like I know you.
Yeah.
You can picture it in your mind.
Oh, I can.
And we had 3 people in it instead of 2. And I don't think we were carrying any gear, but we would swap out who was in what position for paddling. So one person got to ride for a bit, and then the other 2 would paddle and just rotate through. But and this was on the Flint River, and there was a section where there was a waterfall that was about a foot drop. Nothing huge, just enough to, if you don't know what you're doing, it can be problematic, and if you do know what you're doing, it can still be problematic. It's just enough of a drop to that you really want to be careful going over. And so we went over it like we were supposed to, and decided it was way too easy. Stopped, picked up the canoe, hiked back upstream, went down it backwards, decided it was still like too easy, it wasn't exciting. Repeated, but stopping, hiking the canoe back upstream a little bit, and going down sideways. Sideways was a hell of a lot of fun. Not something I would recommend if you want to stay dry, but we kept the canoe upright. That was the main thing.
Nice.
We took on a little bit of water, but not much. We kept it pretty much upright for that drop sideways, and that was our single kind of big yay moment. We were able to do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I had mentioned, it reminds me, I mentioned the Coosa River, and they have some fun rapids, and one of them is a sizable 2 or 3, class 2 or 3. depending on the flow. But it was one time that I went down. I've been down that river at least a dozen times, and it wasn't actually until the last time that I actually successfully navigated that the largest rapid on the river. Every other time I'd ever been down that river, I had not made it through, and I like to blame it on beverages throughout the day, but there have been a number of times where I didn't have any beverages and I still wasn't able to paddle that rapid up right until the very last time, and I figured out some things. And but what your story made me think of was a time where a former work colleague of ours, friend of ours, CJ, was in that river paddling a canoe. I don't think he was solo. He and a friend were in the canoe, and I see them like head for that rapid, and I see the front end of his canoe go way up in the air, and then it comes back down, and then I see it go up again, and I'm like, and they made it through no problem whatsoever. I was amazed. But it was later on that he was not paying attention and got turned sideways and flipped over and running flat, basically running flat water.
Right.
The scenery around him got to the better of him.
I don't remember all the classifications, but I remember on the Flint River, there's a section that we would get out at that's right before Yellow Jacket Shoals, and Yellow Jacket Shoals are Class 3 rapids. And so we would stop in that area. It was like a big, relatively calm area right before it funneled into the rapids. And we never went through those rapids. It's relatively famous for eating canoes in general. And I don't remember enough about the classifications, but that was our demarcation point. And your story just reminded me that we always were very adamantly told, make sure you are out before here, because if you go beyond here, you're going through those rapids one way or another.
Yeah. I guess for anyone who has just a frame of reference, I want to say, so a Class 1 rapid is not, I don't want to say it's not scary, but it's not what you would say significant. And by the time you get to Class 3, you could say that's significant. But I can't remember this. I think a Class 6 rapid is a waterfall. So then you start measuring. I think they technically classify waterfalls as a Class 6 rapid, and then you start measuring in the height of the waterfall.
Yeah, and there are times when I wish I could remember a lot of the details that we more or less knew at the time. Generally speaking, though, I don't really have a desire to go through rapids without a guide anymore. Or maybe the better way to put it, I generally don't have a desire to attempt to navigate rapids on my own. But someone that can provide some pointers and everything else, I'm more than happy to follow. Yeah.
I looked up the classification scale, and Class 1 was very small, rough areas, requires no maneuvering, and in parentheses it says skill level none.
Yeah. It reminds me, I laugh, only because there was one time that we were going down the Flint that we really should not have been on the water. I don't remember the year. It would have been late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in that stretch, where the Flint actually flooded pretty badly. And we went tubing down the Flint after significant rainfall, like a day or two before they closed it to the public in general, like where it was, no, you should not be on the river at all under any circumstances kind of thing. And then it got a bit worse after that. But we went down it just before it got quote unquote closed. And it was a blast. We had some of the best times of our lives because the water was nice and quick, and there were no spots where you had to get up and hike the tube over, because the water level was higher than it should be, kind of thing. And it was just a phenomenally fun experience, but it was also, it could have been disastrous if any of us had actually dropped out of the tubes and got caught in the undercurrent.
Yeah. They when I've gone to the outfitter at the Coosa River, they have a saying there, nose up, toes up. And sadly, I'd paddled that river at least 3 or 4 times before knowing what that meant. And I didn't understand, I understood nose up. That one's pretty obvious, but I didn't quite understand toes up. And I waited around until I overheard somebody ask it, and I got real close, and I wanted to make sure that I had the right, I knew what they were talking about. But anytime you're in a rocky river or a creek, you bring your toes up so they don't get caught in the rocks below. Because if you get caught down there, then you could drown.
Right. It's the same reason you also, not necessarily the same reason, but along a similar vein, it's why you don't just jump into a random body of water like that without knowing what's underneath.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's very easy to suddenly get snagged on something, especially if you're wearing shoes, which you should be to protect the bottom of your foot from being sliced open in the first place. But
Yep.
That's a whole separate, tangent.
It's not fun to learn the hard way.
Yeah. But shoes absolutely are easy to catch on a rock in that type of environment, and people don't give it a second thought because it's not something that is it's not something that most people get exposed to in a consistent enough basis, right? Most people who go out to a river are in close proximity. They're going to go swim for the day. They're just thinking of going out and having a good time. There's not these are the ramifications of some of your decisions if you're not careful kind of safety briefing ahead of time.
Did I ever tell you about the potential near drowning incident I had?
You did, but I don't remember how long ago it's been. So if you want to recount it, that's fine.
So as we record, this is the day after Memorial Day, and I did this 2 years ago on Memorial Day. And I'll say, I've always had respect for the water. I've always would logically understand and say yes. In a struggle between human and water always wins. I mean, sometimes we have a difficult time with even a few teaspoons of water, and they don't drown, but they get choked to death, But yeah, I have been a long time swimmer, pretty, I took swimming pretty seriously. I got to the point where I was 3 days a week when I was in junior in college. I was swimming a little over a mile in 35 minutes. I don't think I ever got less than 33 minutes. I think my best mile was 33 minutes and change. But I've always been a very strong swimmer, and I've always had a relatively healthy respect for the water. But as the years have gone on, I've gotten more and more careful. So if, there's some rivers where or I'll just back up. I believe Alabama state law requires you to have a personal flotation device, a PFD, on your vessel. You don't have to be wearing it. It doesn't even have to be a wearable PFD. It just needs to be something that is classified as properly classified as a PFD has to be on your vessel at all times while you're paddling.
I believe that's correct. Boats. I know it's absolutely correct for any motorized vessel.
Okay. It is correct for a non-motorized vessel.
Okay.
So there's been a few times where I'm familiar with the river. There is no strong current. It's mostly flat water. The type of day that I was going to be having, it was I took a non-wearable PFD. Most of that river, as you fall in, most of where I was, I say river, creek, most of that creek where I was going to be, I could stand up and be okay. So that isn't to say, because I have fallen into a river in a river just like that. I have fallen into like on our path, the one and only 12-foot area. So like I don't want to say it's impossible, but 2 years ago was going down the Coosa River, and at this point, so 2 years ago, how safe I had become, like I told you, safety increase on the Coosa River. Anytime I'm paddling, I will have my life jacket on, no matter what. That was the type of river. It's deep and wide and fast enough that if you fall in, most of the river, it's safe. You're not going to be in any real danger. There's a few places where it's like, you need to be very careful, nose up, toes up for a reason. But most of that river, you fall in, it just makes sense to have your life jacket on so you don't get too tired. You can just float and get to a point where the flow isn't quite as fast, because there's some places where it's very swift. I have since 2 years ago, anytime I am on my boat, I have my life jacket on and fully fastened. Between rapid areas, I would often unzip it and have it, on as a vest, like, an unzipped vest. And I was going through the last, I'd gone through the class 2 rapid, Moccasin Gap, made it through that, fell in. It was not the time that I made it upright. Fell in, no big deal, got my boat. I have all my stuff secured, no big deal. I think I lost my hat. My buddy got it for me. Went through the big rapid. There's like one more class 1 rapid, skill level none, and requires no maneuvering. I go through that with my life jacket on but unzipped, and that was the big mistake right there, was the unzipped. And I lost my balance in that small rapid, and it was pretty deep, and I got stuck in the down current. I like I said, I'm a strong swimmer. I couldn't swim up, and it was too deep for me to touch the bottom. I was able to, I had my eyes open. I could see, was looking up. I'd never looked down, and I'm glad I didn't look down. But I know that I couldn't touch, like I hadn't. I don't want to say I couldn't touch bottom. I don't know how deep it was, but even with being pushed down maybe 6 inches to a foot, I wasn't hadn't touched the bottom yet, and I just remember seeing my boat go by, and I reached for it. So I know it wasn't more than 2 feet, because like I could reach up and my hand was out of the water, but I couldn't swim out of the down force of the rapid, and I grabbed the handle of my boat and held onto it, and that's what pulled me out of the current. But I remember being underwater enough to take on a little bit of water. I think the last time I timed how long I could hold my breath, it wasn't terribly long. I'm hearkening back to one of the earliest episodes of this show where we talked about the mammalian diving response.
I remember that.
Yeah. I want to say it was probably 30 seconds I was underwater, but enough to where everyone that I was with, saw me not come up and were genuinely very concerned for my well-being. I know I took on some water, so I must have been. It couldn't. I don't think it was a minute. I don't. I'd be surprised if it was 30 seconds actually, because 30 seconds doesn't seem like a long time to hold your breath, but it is.
And that experience warps your sense of time much.
It does.
In general. Like it could have been, not trying to sound negative in any way, but it could have even been 15 seconds. And it
yes,
felt like a minute.
Absolutely.
And
I'm
conversely, it could have been 45 seconds. And, I'm not saying that it was longer or shorter. It's just under that circumstance. And anybody who has ever had an issue while scuba diving or being underwater in general can relate. A stressful underwater situation is unnatural for a human, and time stands still. Like 5 seconds can feel like a minute.
Well, I try not to use any sort of like perception of how time passed to think of how long I was underwater, because I don't know. Like, and I know my perception is not accurate. And I'm trying to think, how long can I hold my breath? If I can hold my breath for 20 seconds, no problem, then I was probably under for 30 seconds. But that's like, but maybe I was under longer, and I'm like selling myself short. So I try not to think about the time so much as like, it was definitely enough time for 6 people to be concerned about my well-being, and one of, a couple of them, like, urgently trying to get to where I was. So however long it takes for that to happen, which seems I don't know. But yeah, ever since then, anytime I'm on a river like that, it is vest on, zipped up, fastened all the way. Anytime I'm with my kids, it's all of us. That's how you paddle. You do not paddle without having your vest on completely and fastened in every way that it was designed to be fastened to protect you. So
I think it's pretty clear that I don't have a lot of paddling experience in general, but a lot of scuba diving, a lot of swimming, was a lifeguard for a while. Like, I'm very comfortable around the water, even on a regular, just motorized boat, where the requirement is just that there has to be a flotation device per person. You won't find me without it buckled and fully zipped, because there's a certain amount of unpredictability to the water that if you've been around it long enough, you know that no matter how confident you are in your abilities, that day could be the day that something just goes a little bit screwy. And there's a reason PFDs exist, and it's because it takes care of those one-offs, wild 1 in 100, chance encounters or issues that result in death.
They absolutely save lives. I can remember a time in the river, in a swift part of the river, a friend of mine was, we were all hanging out at a gravel bar and swimming in the water and continuing on with our day and drinking. And a friend had a beer in hand, and he got picked up by the water, and he didn't want to drop his beer, and he got pushed out, and he was going, and we kind of got concerned for him. And I went to, in most of the paddling things I go to, I'm probably the strongest swimmer there. Not always, but probably most of the time I think I am. And so I go after him to get him. This was a time where I was not in my boat, not paddling, and I was sitting in the water with my vest on, but I didn't have it zipped because I was just using it to be lazy, so I wouldn't have to swim. But I'm sitting in 2 feet of water, and I zip it up and I take it because I know that it's going to keep me buoyant. I can use my stroke to move forward, but also when I get him, I'm going to be at some point in this whole rigmarole, I'm going to be a little bit I'm going to get tired at some point, and so I went and I got him because he didn't have his life jacket on. I successfully got him back, and neither of us spilled his beer. So all good, all's well that ends well. So, but yeah, that was definitely a time I was like, I cannot go without my jacket. I definitely will need this PFD. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after-show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.